The Chevy Suburban is an all-encompassing family vehicle, and while size may be the distinguishing factor, there's a lot more to it than just that. If you enjoy fun, detailed car reviews, consider subscribing and hitting the bell for notifications. It may seem small, but it helps the channel get more cars to review. Thank you. While it does look like a bus, I'm glad that it's not over-styled to the point where it's menacing to children in the school drop-off zone. But style's subjective, so let me know what you guys think in the comments section. So these things are going to start out at about $60,000. Thankfully, you do get a ton of features for what you're paying for. There's going to be a plethora of flavors that you can get the Suburban in, from the pretty base utilitarian LS grade to this off-road-ish oriented Z71, and then the luxury cruiser high countries. And disregarding the LS, there are many packages available on each trim. All of them will have LED headlights with LED daytime running lights, though no projectors are available and no fog lights are available. Grab the luxury package to get a 360 view camera, which is hugely important in a vehicle this large. And parking sensors come on all burbs. And if neither of those things help you, you have 8 inches of ground clearance to clear curbs or small unforeseen obstacles, or maybe on purpose obstacles if you get the Z71, or the high country for that matter. You can get an air suspension that will lift this thing up to 10 inches of ground clearance. On top of that, the Z71 comes with a skid plate and some tow hooks, but no proper rear locking differential, though I'm glad to see an improved approach angle. Coming around the side of the Suburban, it's kind of, it is indeed 226 inches long. Surprisingly, that's not the biggest in the segment. The Wagoneer L actually takes the W when it comes to dimensions, if you want to look at it like that, but it's still pretty hard to fit in a garage. So really ask yourself if a beast like this is necessary. Alloy wheels are standard, and you'll find 18 to 22 inch wheels on the Chevy. All do have proximity unlock and lock. LT models and above will get a power rear tailgate, but the hands-free function does not work when you're actually trying to close the hatch. Thankfully, the rear glass does open like some of its competitors, and I find the design interesting because it hides the rear wiper. Now, once you open up that big hatch, you will run into the party piece of the Suburban. The cargo area of the Suburban is more than cavernous. In fact, it's about 9 feet long. With the second row up, it's about 5'10". So a lot of people could use this for camping with the 4 seats still in place. And there's still plenty of length with the third row up. The well-packaged independent rear suspension allows for good height if you want even more American units. This can fit the approximate volume of 72 jackfruits, or 42 mini fridges, and the area itself is just wide enough to accommodate a 4x8 drywall sheet, but it's not just stupid big, it's well thought out. So you'll have storage underneath the cargo floor. You'll actually have a rear outlet. You can fold both the front and second row from back here. And it doesn't stop there. The rest of the cabinet is characterized by big physical controls, large space, great storage, and quality materials, at least if you're up front. Oh, sorry, that just sometimes happens getting in this thing. But this will fit a wide variety of people because of the highly adjustable seats. Not only does it have lumbar control standard, it has that standard on the passenger side as well. You can sit up very high if you want, or if you're tall, you can lower the seat a ton. Even with the sunroof here, I still have a few inches. It's also very mildly bolstered. I do wish that the seat bottom was both a little more plush and a little longer to increase support, but on the highway, I have no complaints. Now, the pro to having numerous physical controls is that you don't have to spend time digging through the touchscreen. It's quick and easy to adjust the HVAC, and it's great to see volume and tune dials, but it's almost too saturated with stuff to push and twist. It seems like there's a way to also reduce the number of buttons down here, but that overhead console also brings up concerns for me because the amount of times that I've gone to try to like throw back the sunshade and then on accident moved the center console because that's electronic. I guess you can transport drinks to the rear passenger.
Nearby, you also have the ability to fold the rear seats.
The same thing with the location for the rear gate release. Most of the time, it's just next to your left knee, but there's also a million buttons over here. The advantage is that the passenger can also press it, but finding a way to combine some of these buttons, please, GM, do not put them in the touchscreen. Thank you for keeping them physical. I appreciate that. I would take this over, the full touchscreen layout any day of the week, but hopefully they can streamline things in the future. I do think that they've gotten the infotainment system right. Resolution is good, response time is okay.
It comes with wireless CarPlay and Android Auto as standard, and it has a straightforward layout, which helps lower my blood pressure while I tow a single family home and haul my 6 kids who are also over 6 foot.
Available on the LT and up is a full digital gauge cluster, which is highly configurable, but once again, it's not the easiest system to interact with.
It looks crisp. I'm also a fan of the accents and trim.
You have nice stitching and soft touch materials lining the dash and the upper door card. I even have soft touch materials where my knees rest. There's also zero glossy black plastic. I think this will age very well, and the build quality, the panel fitment is solid. Plus, there is plenty of storage cubbies, especially in the door panel. You have, a kind of sneaky one here, but then you have an even sneakier one if you slide back the console and then reach underneath it. I think that's kind of fun. Now, another thing that I think is entertaining is on the LS trim, you can actually still get a front bench. Now, when it comes to other available features, most things are based in packages. Tri-zone automatic climate control is standard equipment. Get an LT trim and you'll have heated front seats, a wireless charger. A panoramic sunroof is another option, as is a head-up display, ventilated front seats, a heated steering wheel, and much more.
On only the LS trim, you will find just 6 speakers to cover this entire 1-bedroom apartment of a cabin.
Now, this 9-speaker Bose sound system is okay. It doesn't seem to distort. There's just such a big cabin that it kind of gets a little boomy at times. And then if you go with the 10-speaker unit that you'll get with the most decked out Suburbans, you'll get a center channel speaker that should improve it. Before I head into the back, I do want to complain about one thing. This shifter, it's just the least substantial way to change gears. I really just prefer a column shifter at this point. There's no surprises in the backseat of the Suburban. Here with the optional captain's chairs, I have very soft elbow rests. I have my own HVAC controls, and I even have my own screens as part of the rear entertainment package. They have like Hulu and YouTube on them. And of course it comes with some, just okay wireless headphones.
Families will also appreciate the standard rear outlet, side-mounted seat adjustments so you don't have to reach over a child, plentiful storage, and available heated rear seats, though ventilated cushions are unavailable.
And there's also good comfort back here. The floor is low, so I have great thigh support for a rear seat.
And even with the front seat in a comfortable position for myself at 6'3", I have more than enough space.
The seats themselves are soft. Plus the materials back here don't take a big step behind the front seat. Most of those things do not apply to the third row. Getting into the third row of the Suburban is very easy, and this is a very practical third row because I actually have just enough knee room here. I can have good posture and my head is not hitting the roof. That alone earns this a ton of merit.
But I am disappointed in a couple of areas. The first is the material choice.
It feels like an economy bus or plane. Everything is hard touch plastic, and the seats are pretty upright, and there's no way to recline them a little bit. Even the Toyota Sequoia allows for that. Though truthfully, we need to readjust our standards. Remember that there is an Escalade, there is a Yukon that is going to sit above this. They're going to have more advanced features and better materials all around. At least I do have good thigh support. Every seat of the Suburban is a hospitable place to be, and it is very easy to get out because this little button here that can tumble the seat forward with just 2 clicks. So, to the surprise of no one, practicality is an advantage. On the road, the Suburban carries a level of refinement that exceeds my expectations, even given the price point, which is kind of important. We do need to remember this thing is, as equipped, well over $70,000. Not cheap for a Chevy. So What do you get? Well, a standard V8, 5.3 liters, 355 horsepower, 383 pound-feet of torque, or you can get a 6.2 liter with the higher trims. Now this does weigh about 3 tons. So you kind of need it. That said, I have no complaints with the acceleration of the Suburban, and part of that is thanks to the 10-speed automatic transmission. This is going to be the same one that you're going to get on every single model. Even with the 3-liter Duramax turbo diesel that they have been offering now for a couple of years. While I haven't driven that, it has 460 pound-feet of torque and gets stellar gas mileage. I would definitely recommend it, as it also doesn't really cost you very much extra over the 5.3. While it doesn't technically tow more, having that sort of power band geared towards the lower RPM is nicer when you're actually pulling something with it. The 10-speed automatic also does a great job at selecting the right gear. Sometimes at lower speeds you may notice some hesitancy. It doesn't always shift buttery smooth, but again, for a truck-based SUV, I think it has very nice road manners. But now let's give the Land Train a proper acceleration test. Well, definitely not the point of this big beast. 0 to 60 came up in 7.1 seconds, in line with what you would get from most 3-row crossovers. Now, I had it just there in 2-wheel drive, but the nice thing about the Suburban when compared to a vehicle like the Sequoia I drove not too long ago, it essentially gives you part-time 4-wheel drive, or in 4-wheel drive auto, all-wheel drive. It uses a clutch pack in the transfer case, so that when you select 4-wheel drive auto, it's still going to be primarily rear-wheel drive. Very little power is actually going to the front, but the moment it detects slip, it gives you more torque to the front axle. That way, if it's just rainy out, a little snowy out, or whatever situation, you can put it in 4-wheel drive and not worry about any sort of damage or binding.
An ELSD is also available in the rear to help get power to the ground, but again, no rear locker for serious off-roading.
Getting up to speed, this has no problem. Cruising at 65 miles per hour, we're at about 1600 RPM. Tire noise is kept down nicely. You do have an acoustic windshield, which you'd expect at this kind of price, but that does help for easy highway conversation. It also gets pretty good gas mileage, but there is a small caveat to this that I will get into later. I was able to average about 20 miles per gallon when I was easy on it. Honestly, over the past week, I've been able to match or beat the gas mileage I was getting with the V6 Toyota Tacoma I just reviewed. Plus, the 5.3 recommends regular gasoline, whereas the 6.2 actually says you should put in premium. If it's me, I think I'm sticking with this engine, or maybe going the diesel route, unless maybe you live in the mountains and you're constantly hauling close to that 1,700 pound payload max that this thing has.
While towing capacity is an inherent advantage with this type of SUV, the Suburban is not a class leader.
This tows at very minimum 7,400 pounds and at max 8,300. Respectable numbers, but behind the Ford Expedition, Jeep, Grand Wagoneer, and Toyota Sequoia. Now, something that truck-based SUVs used to struggle with, and some still do, is smoothness, and that is not a problem here with the Suburban. Now, this one does have the optional Magna ride and the optional Air ride because it's a press truck and they want to impress you, and impressed I am. I've heard good things about the standard suspension too, so if you don't want to spend the extra money, you're not losing out on a ton. The highway experience may be good, but on a bad road, this is even better. There isn't a comfort mode in the Suburban. It's just always comfortable. It smooths out all of the small and minor imperfections. There is a little bit of, truck-like bounciness over the larger things, but nothing is crashing through the cabin, and there's very minute shuddering. This is the same road I took the new Sequoia, which also had its adaptive suspension, and that was just nowhere near as forgiving as this. If you live around apocalypse-style roads, the Suburban is a great companion. Now, on some nice windy back roads, the Suburban communicates nothing, and that is the way that you would want it to be, but it's easy. The steering is not a chore. It's weighted well. It is relatively direct when you hit imperfections going around corners. The independent rear suspension and just good dampening keeps the thing feeling very solid and confident.
Considering its heft and its priorities, there's not a single part of the ride and handling that I would change. To help keep other people safe from the wrath of 6,000 pounds, this has autonomous braking and lane departure prevention standard. While the beltline isn't too high and there aren't any egregious blind spots, the long and tall hood will keep things directly in front of you quite invisible.
For 2023, a big feature now available is Super Cruise, but that is only on the top trim trucks. Even this Z71 with the driver alert package does not have adaptive cruise. And this also doesn't have lane centering unless you get adaptive cruise. When it comes to longevity, the Suburban has room for improvement. The Ecotec 3 V8s are direct injection and they have cylinder deactivation. That's partially why it's able to get such good gas mileage. It's not unheard of for these engines to suffer from fuel pump failure, injector failure, and from the direct injection carbon buildup, but it doesn't seem like any of those things are overwhelming. And honestly, I also think that the cylinder deactivation causing lifter failure is also a little blown out of proportion, at least from the amount of reports that I was reading, but they're still definitely worth mentioning. The previous generation also suffered some brake and AC issues, but those seem to be alleviated. MagneRide also used to be known to leak and last roughly about 70,000 miles. It seemed like that was kind of the common failure point, and then people would switch to an aftermarket MagneRide, which honestly I would recommend because it works so well.
Often people will disable or delete the cylinder deactivation too. It seems like the most common issues reported for the new generation since its 2021 model year debut is electrical bugs, especially in the infotainment and navigation.
The 10-speed automatic has also been much better than the old 6-speed automatic that had some notorious problems. Still not perfect, but largely improved. It's been used since I think 2018. After some research, I don't think I can recommend this to someone who highly prioritizes reliability, but it's also worth mentioning that a lot of people are very satisfied with these, especially those that change their oil very frequently. These engines really need that, especially with the cylinder deactivation. The diesel is also an option, and that has its own issues, but is a good engine overall. When we also factor in the resale value, I don't think this is a bad long-term purchase when we're comparing it to, large luxury SUVs. Usually when I try to recommend a vehicle, I find what purposes it serves best. And with the Suburban, this thing started out its life as a vehicle designed to fit any purpose that you needed, and it still does that today. It can tow. It can haul a lot of people in comfort. It handles well for its size. It has a dizzying amount of features available.
It seems like the Suburban's main goal was to exceed any reasonable or unrestrained needs you may have. The obvious and age-old critique here is that it's an inconvenient land yacht in the city with a hood so high it could hide a short family of 4 at a crosswalk. Some people do tow heavy stuff while using all 3 rows, but as many others have pointed out, this is often overkill. However, that argument applies to many other things. People like myself buy all-wheel drive cars because they encounter a little snow occasionally. We want electric cars with 500-mile ranges for just a few trips a year. Many buy focused driver's cars to enjoy epic roads or tracks, but how often do most actually get to experience those limits? I'd argue that my GR Corolla brings a smile to my face, but there are a lot of cheaper cars that could do the same. For most automotive purchases, the truth of whether you actually need it or not will likely remain hidden to others. And it's easy to make excuses as to why we must have this or that attribute. While it would make sense to buy the car that we need 95% of the time, if we can afford it, we want to buy the car we need just 1% of the time. A Honda Odyssey is more competent and sensible as a family vehicle, but it carries some mechanical limitations. The Suburban is excessive. Many would call it wasteful, and I can't disagree with that, but as an enthusiast, I also buy cars that are more than what I really need. If you want the peace of mind that you can handle whatever situation may arise, the Chevy can haul anything you could possibly need to whatever location you can think of, and it'll do it in comfort. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then leave a like to help me sneak into the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the bell for more, and follow me on Patreon for an additional podcast. I'll catch you in the next one.